This is my Epson SureColor F2100 DTG printer, and today I'm going to give you guys a complete cost breakdown of what it's like owning one. Now, I won't be able to give you guys exact numbers based on your circumstances. I'll do my best to give you guys current prices as well as using my previous experience with printing and maintenance. First, as an introduction, the Epson F2100 is a DTG or direct-to-garment printer. Simply enough, the ink on this printer is printed directly onto the garment, kind of like a household printer, but for shirts. Additionally, you are able to use this machine for direct-to-film or DTF printing. This is an option that opens the doors to a lot more decorating opportunities. Now, I don't want to get too much into the functionality of this machine, as like I said, I want to get into the cost breakdown to help you decide to see if this machine makes sense for you and your business. For this video, I'll be breaking everything down into sections, which I'll have timestamped here below. And that way you can skip through the chapters to see if you want to see anything specific or jump in between. Additionally, here's the list of chapters that I'll be covering. I'll be covering the cost of the printer itself, of course, all the way down to the maintenance and miscellaneous items. First and foremost is going to be the cost of the printer itself. Now, I bought my printer brand new from All American Print Supply Co. And at the time, it was $14,995 for me. However, if you are looking on Epson's website, it does show MSRP of $18,995. But if you look around, most F2100 vendors do sell it currently for about $15,495. If you are looking to purchase this brand new and you haven't owned one of these before, make sure to check with your vendor to see if they provide any educational support or instructions on how to use the machine, as the learning curve on this can be very steep. I know Equipment Zone is well known for their educational material on the F2100, and I believe if you purchase the machine through them, they do provide extra training for free. They also do have a paid version of this. Say if you bought the printer from a different company and you're struggling, but you recognize you do need additional help, they do have an option where you can pay for learning as well. Although I'm not sponsored by Equipment Zone, and like I said, I actually bought this machine from All American Print Supply Co., I do feel obligated to mention it because the amount of stuff I've learned from Equipment Zone with both their free material, both on Facebook and YouTube, as well as their Facebook group specifically, they have a small little community, is definitely well worth it and helped me overcome a lot of troubles. But for now, let's get back to the machine. For the machine, in order to run it, Epson does provide their own RIP software called Garment Creator. This is completely free and it allows you to get printing right away. However, you can also purchase other RIP software such as Cathari Print Pro from All American or Easy Rip Pro from Equipment Zone. Either of these is going to run you about $1,200, but give you more control over your prints and may reduce ink cost in the long run. On top of the printer itself, Epson also includes a 1-year warranty or service plan, which covers 100% of the parts or labor if you have any issues with your machine. Now, I don't have to say how big that is because you're just purchasing a brand new $15,000 printer. You want to make sure it's working fine, and if you do have issues, to get it fixed quickly. Additionally, you are able to extend that service plan for up to 5 years for about $1,899 per year, depending on how long of a term you extend it for directly from Epson. Now, I understand that this is a very steep cost. However, you are purchasing a $15,000 printer with a lot of working components. If you're unsure how to fix these things or you just don't want to worry about it, it's definitely worth the peace of mind. When purchasing your printer, you're also going to want to get a few other things before you get started. The first one being Pretreat. I could and maybe will in the future make an entire video on Pretreat itself. However, for this video, I'm just going to talk about the ones I have used and the ones I currently use. When I purchased my printer, it did come with a free 5-gallon container of Epson Pretreat, which you then dilute with some distilled water at specific ratios in order to use the Pretreat. I personally did not ever get it tuned in enough to get some success with that Pretreat. However, I've seen a lot of people get phenomenal prints with the Pretreat, so maybe it's something I just didn't spend enough time on. For now, my recommendations are going to be right here. For the dark color shirts or anything that you're going to be printing white on, I recommend the Firebird FBX 100 Gen 3 or the Creek Universal Concentrate that I've also been testing right now. For white shirts or light color garments that you're not going to be printing white ink on, I'll definitely recommend Firebird Vivid. I haven't found anything better than that, so that's the only thing I use currently. Regardless of what Pretreat that you end up selecting and using, you're going to have to do some testing to dial it in. This is going to help you find a balance between getting good print quality and eliminating that DTG box as much as you can. The primary reason that I initially switched to Firebird is because they've done a lot of in-house testing already between different brands as well as different color shirts. And this is important because it may be some colors require more or less Pretreat, as well as some brands are thicker or thinner, and they also might require more or less Pretreat. All their numbers that they have are available on their t-shirt matrix, which in the beginning I used a lot, so I'll leave a link to that in the description below. When you are using the matrix, use it with a grain of salt. I think it gives a great baseline to start testing, but definitely try it out, see if it works, and you might have to use more or less depending on your circumstances. As for cost of pretreatment, depending again on what brand that you end up using, it's about $50 per gallon of pretreat, and of course is usually reduced with volume. While still talking about Pretreat, my personal recommendation on applying Pretreat is with a Pretreat machine. This one that I have here next to me is the Mr. T2 from EcoFreen. Of course, cost is going to be a huge factor here, but in order to get the most consistent results, I highly recommend having a digital Pretreat machine. With that being said, you'll definitely be able to get started with other Pretreat options as well, but you might have issues with Pretreat consistency down the road. In my opinion, Pretreat is going to be one of the foundations of getting a good quality print, so getting this down is going to be very important. With all of that out of the way, the Wagner sprayer is going to be about $100, while most Pretreat machines are going to be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 and maybe a little bit more. My EcoFreen Mr. T2, I purchased it for $3,495 on Black Friday when it was discounted significantly from their retail price of $4,495. The last large cost you're going to have to consider is with a heat press. Now you can use a conveyor to cure your DTG prints, but for this video I'm solely going to be talking about heat presses because that's what I use and what I'm familiar with. You may already have one if you are in garment decorating already, or maybe other crafts as well. However, having a quality heat press machine which reads out accurate temperatures will significantly help you with your testing process, and of course is going to give you a lot more consistent prints when you're curing them. I personally have the Stahl's Hotronix Fusion IQ, which runs currently about $2,575 directly from Stahl's, but is sometimes discounted with their events or holidays. I was lucky enough to find one of these on Facebook Marketplace that was nearby, so I was able to grab one for about $1,500, and so far it's been working without any issues. Now I personally consider Stahl's to be top of the line when it comes to heat presses. However, there are other options out there such as Heat Press Nation and Geonite that make quality machines as well. I previously owned a 16x16 Heat Press Nation press as well as the DK20 from Geonite. Ultimately, I decided to upgrade to the Fusion IQ because of the ease of use as well as the flexibility and options that it has. Needless to say, the choice of heat press that you'll use is going to depend on your needs and requirements of your shop. However, I will leave you with this. Be careful with some of those unbranded or unnamed heat presses. I have seen horror stories from those where they've led to either house fires or major electrical issues because these heat presses require a lot of electricity. So if you are shopping around and you find one that's maybe too good to be true, be careful because it likely is. With that, we've covered all the equipment. So now we're going back to the printer and I want to talk to you guys about the ink. The Epson F2100 out of the box does come with all the cartridges you need to get started printing. That includes a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to fill the CMYK slots, as well as 2 white cartridges to fill both white slots. Now there is also a cleaning cartridge slot, but I'll talk more about that in the maintenance section. When purchasing your machine, I would recommend purchasing 2 extra white ink cartridges. This is because during the initial setup, the printer fills the internal components with that ink, and that's going to leave you with both white cartridges at about half or maybe less than half full. Because of this, having those 2 extra cartridges on hand is going to save you a little bit of time with having to order some more immediately after setting up. For cost, these white cartridges are sitting around $230 a piece. However, as a reminder, you do need to replace these in pairs. That means every time you have to replace the white ink, you need to be ready to spend about $460. Unfortunately, in the beginning, you're going to be going through a lot of ink, especially when you're testing and doing a lot of printing. Also, depending on the print quantity and the design sizes, you might be using a lot more ink. In this video, I feel required to address the other white ink options that people have found for their Epson F2100. From my experience, using genuine F2100 ink is going to be always the best option. However, the first alternative is just going to be aftermarket ink. There are several brands out there that produce ink cartridges that you can use in your F2100, but from what I've seen, a lot of times, worst case scenario, it causes print head issues and clogging in the lines. In best case scenario, you maybe get better print quality, but you save a little bit of money. Another alternative would be with refillable cartridges. This is a method where some people purchase cartridges that can then be refilled with bulk ink, whether that's an aftermarket brand or even the Epson brand ink. A lot of people use the F3070 ink. As far as I'm aware, it's the same ink as the F2100, but it is cheaper just based on volume. Addition to that, you are required to purchase chips that go on the back of the cartridges, and you do have to replace those periodically to let the printer know that the cartridge is full. Ultimately, to summarize, if you're new to DTG or if you're not sure, just stick with the regular F2100 ink cartridges and factor in that cost into your final price. The cost of the CMYK cartridges, on the other hand, is a little bit cheaper than the white ink at $217 and typically does not have to be replaced as often, depending on how much you print white shirts or light color shirts. Additionally, when you're replacing the CMYK, you'll only need to replace 1 per color instead of like the 2 with the white ink. Next is going to be one of the more important, but sometimes overlooked sections of the machine: maintenance. Epson has built this machine to be incredibly low maintenance, but that doesn't mean you can ignore or skip it. Thankfully, Epson has created several fail-safes within the machine to either prevent you from printing or let you know if there's upcoming maintenance required. In addition to that, they even include a maintenance schedule, which allows you to see what needs to be done either daily, weekly, monthly, and so on. One of the more important parts of the machine maintenance is going to be when it cycles the ink. It does this periodically when the machine is on or every time the machine is turned on and off. This is very important because it helps keep the print head and the print lines from getting clogged. For machine maintenance, there's going to be 4 different products that we need, of which I only have 3 here in front of me. The first one being the cleaning cartridge. This is going to be about $21 for this cleaning cartridge, which is filled with just solution that goes in directly into the machine. The second one is going to be the print head kit. This is going to be $115 and it's going to include the spit filter, a fabric wiper, and a print head capping station. Next is going to be the air filter. This is only $27. And finally, we have the maintenance kit, which is $42, which includes cleaning solution as well as swabs to clean around the print head and the capping station. The amount of these that you'll use will definitely depend on how often you print. For me, in the past year, I've used 2 cleaning cartridges, 1 air filter. With the maintenance kit, you really don't need to replace it until you're out of solution. So this is the only one I've needed so far. And then I've also used 2 print head cleaning kits as well. For this next section, you may or may not need extra one of these, but we're going to be covering Platens. Although the F2100 ships with their 14 by 16 inch platen, there are other sizes and styles that are available out there, including the ones from Epson as well as ones made aftermarket. Now again, in this situation, I recommend the OEM Epson Platens. This is mainly because of the quality and they are very lightweight and easy to use. In combination with their grip tape that they have, it makes the printing that I do very, very easy. However, the biggest downside of using the OEM Platens is going to be the cost, with the smallest size being $368 going up to their largest size of the 16 inch by 20 inch platen, which is going to be $525. As mentioned, there are other style platens such as hoodie or zipper specific platens, as well as even things such as shoe or hat platens. There are also some all-in-one size platens that are available and made aftermarket. I haven't used these, but from what I've seen, they aren't really high quality and they don't really hold up over time. Either way, you don't have to feel like you need to limit yourself to the 14 by 16 inch platen that's provided, but if you are purchasing a platen, make sure you anticipate using it. This one here, I purchased this sleeve platen a while ago and I think I've used it maybe once or twice. For the rest of the year, it just sits on my shelf. Now, before I talk about the other miscellaneous items that I use with my F2100, I wanted to talk about the option of DTF or direct-to-film printing with the machine. Using the Epson F2100 for film transfers opens a whole new world for decorating garments. For example, you can use these transfers on non-cotton based apparel, as well as things like hats, all the way to things that are not worn, such as bags or maybe even boxes. Although it's not recommended or promoted by Epson, there is a lot of third-party support for this, making it a lot easier to do. I personally use films from EcoFreen or Equipment Zone. Both are great. However, I find myself using Equipment Zone more because I can purchase these when I'm purchasing supplies that I need from their website. I usually order the 14 inch by 16 inch films, and these cost typically around 70 cents to about $1.10 per sheet, depending on how many you order. The more you buy, of course, the cheaper it's going to be. The Easy DTF Pro film that I purchased is $104.99 for 100 sheets, and that's going to be plenty to get you started. Additionally, you're going to need some adhesive powder for the DTF process, which can vary in price, but I normally use the Easy DTF Pro, which is $32.99 for a kilogram bag. This is going to last you a long time because you can reuse any of the powder that doesn't stick to your ink. The last thing I'm going to mention is with the ink cost of doing DTF, this is typically going to be significantly less than having the same design printed in DTG. This is because the lesser amount of ink that's being used during the DTF process. Having the ability to do my own film transfers on the Epson F2100 was definitely a deciding factor for me, and I do find myself regularly printing film transfers, whether that's because I'm printing in an unusual location or even if I'm just doing something simple like neck tags. The final category that I'm going to be talking about is any miscellaneous associated costs that I have with the F2100. Specifically, I'm going to be covering testing costs, garments, as well as tools that I use. The first associated cost is going to be with test prints. Now, in the beginning, they may feel extremely wasteful, but they are absolutely necessary for you to learn your machine as well as the printing process. When I first purchased my machine, I was able to get okay prints because the process isn't that hard to understand. However, if a variable changed, such as a different color shirt or a thicker material like a hoodie, I would have the worst time trying to figure out why I couldn't get a good print. My frustration was so bad that I got to a point where I almost sold everything that I had in DTG at a loss just to get rid of everything. However, since then, I've learned that testing is the best way to get you to understand your machine and the different variables that go into it, whether it's the ink or the pre-treat or the curing process. Regardless of which variable changes, the best way to get good prints is to test. After a while, when you start to understand the machine and the process a little bit more, when things change, you're going to be a little bit better at changing it. There are a lot of people that have done their own testing. However, from my experience, what worked for some people might not work for others. So definitely see what others are doing to see if there's maybe something you could try differently. However, at the end of the day, you need to figure out what works for your process and stick to that. Unfortunately for cost, this is going to be a bit of a vague answer, but just be prepared to spend some extra money in blanks, as well as taking in consideration the ink cost that goes into it. When you are using these blanks, make sure to print as many times as you can on it, and then when you are done with it, cut it up and use it for rags or something else. Don't just throw it away. Speaking of shirts, the next associated cost, which I think is again one of the major foundations of getting a good print, is going to be with the garment that you're using. I still print on some limited customer supplied goods. However, for my own inventory, I mainly keep Cotton Heritage almost exclusively, with Bella Canvas and Next Level being a backup for t-shirts. And for hoodies, I use Independent Trading Company. My reasoning is strictly just because of the higher quality that these brands produce, which give me higher quality prints. With that being said, a t-shirt for me costs anywhere from $4 to $5, which seems a little bit higher, but allows me to get a very premium print onto a premium t-shirt, and that's what my customers love. Despite this though, you can get good prints on cheaper shirts or different kinds of shirts. However, it just might require more ink as well as more pre-treat, and at the end of the day, that's also going to be more cost. For the best price on blanks, I highly recommend you set up all the accounts with your vendors, but mainly you want to start with the big three, which is going to be SS Activewear, Sanmar, and Alpha Broder. And then if you find brands that you want specifically, reach out to them, check their website for wholesale accounts, and sign up. The last and final things I want to mention are going to be with my DTG tools. The first one is going to be with silicone parchment paper. This is going to be something that I use whenever I'm curing the pre-treat or if I'm curing a final print. Although I do have a Teflon cover for my heat press, using these sheets saves me the hassle of having to clean off that Teflon periodically. You can also use different style pressing papers such as Teflon sheets, but I personally just like using these parchment papers. I get mine in bulk from Uline, which they sell 1,000 of these for $113 or about 13 cents each. But you can also get these from All American or Equipment Zone, and it's gonna range closer to about 20 to 25 cents per sheet. Another tool that I have here on the wall next to me are gonna be these misting bottles. I have these filled with pre-treat, one bottle with dark pre-treat and one bottle with light. This saves me from having to take something to the pre-treat machine if I just need to pre-treat something very quick. I can get it on the heat press, spray it while it's on there, and press it immediately. It also helps with unusual locations, like if I'm doing t-shirt sleeves or something like that, and I can't really get it nicely pre-treated in the pre-treat machine. Sometimes it's easier just to use one of these misting bottles. Another thing I keep with my pre-treat tools is going to be with one of these foam rollers. This is going to be something I use to help press the pre-treat into the fibers of shirts. Getting that pre-treat into the fiber, to me, I think is a very important step. So I use this almost every single time I pre-treat something. The last thing I wanted to include is just going to be my DTF tote, which I use to contain all the DTF powder. As I mentioned, any of the powder that doesn't stick to your print can be reused. So I just keep it in this tote here, and it is big enough to get one of my sheets in there, powdered up, and then shaken off, so all the excess lands back into the tote. One thing I'll mention is if you do this, only put as much powder as you need in there, because over time you're gonna get hairs or dust or stuff in there. So when that happens, I just dump that powder out and then refill it with new powder. In conclusion, owning an F2100 DTG machine is not going to be the cheapest way to get into decorating apparel, especially when you compare it to like vinyl, sublimation, or purchasing transfers. However, with this machine, you're able to print on demand, phenomenal looking prints that feel great, as well as have the option to print your own film transfers. If you already own a heat press, you can expect to get started with an F2100 for as low as maybe around $16,000. That's going to include the printer, a bunch of pre-treat and shirts, as well as a Wagner sprayer. However, you might be looking at spending $20,000 or more if you do plan on buying the printer along with a pre-treat machine and a quality heat press. I would also like to note that there are several financing options available to cover the cost of your equipment. I personally have used Synchrony as well as PayPal. However, I'm unable to give you a financial recommendation based on you and your own needs of your shop. Ultimately, I'll leave a final cost breakdown of everything that I mentioned below in the description. I'll also include any links to suppliers, vendors, or any products that I mentioned in this video. All of those are going to be non-affiliate except for my Amazon links. The purpose of putting those out there are just to make these resources available to you and help you guys out. If you've made it this far, I hope you found this video to be very informative. Make sure to subscribe. I make these videos with the main purpose of educating or entertaining in the world of DTG, as well as embroidery or whatever other decorating things I find down the road. Regardless, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys have a good one. Take care.